Hey, well, good morning, everybody. It's a real joy to see so many of you here with us this morning, and a very warm welcome to our whole education early years school improvement programme. For some of you, you may have noticed that our branding has had a bit of a redesign over the Christmas holidays, and that new branding is very much designed to show our human and expressive side because people are at the absolute heart of whole education. Our vision is that everyone thrives in a transforming world. And that vision is for all of you here today. We really see that vision lived out for children and adults in the school communities that we serve. And whole education aims to bring people together as a network, and we're really excited to be building this network of early years leaders. And a very warm welcome to all of you here today. Thanks, Fee. At the heart, oh sorry, just one back, sorry, Fee. At the heart of whole education, we believe in the power of holistic education, and we've identified these aspects that we believe a holistic education should achieve, and that's to make learning relevant, develop knowledge, skills, and dispositions, inspire ownership of learning, look beyond the classroom, engage with community and enable everyone to thrive. And just while we've got that side up, I just invite you to think about, I wonder which areas really resonate with you as a leader here today. I wonder which of those areas you feel really passionate about and proud of in your school setting. And I wonder if there are some of those areas that you would really like to develop as part of this program and as part of your wider work. Thanks, Fee. So a very warm welcome to all of you. We're delighted to have so many people with us this morning. On behalf of White Horse Federation, a warm welcome. Seven Academies, welcome to all of you today. Cabot Learning Federation, welcome. We've got representatives from Hales Valley Trust and United Learning, a warm welcome, and from Brigantia. So a very warm welcome to all of you. Part of this programme together is about coming together as a community, and we hope there'll be opportunities for you to network as a group within your trust, within your schools, and together as a much wider community. And while we're thinking of those introductions as well, between trusts, I'd really like to formally introduce you to Fee, who I'm sure lots of you have heard from already from the email communication. Thanks, Fee, just gave a wave. Fee will keep you updated with all aspects of the programme, dates, upcoming events, and we're going to be working on a newsletter as well so that we can keep you well informed of things that are coming up and practice sharing. We're also really delighted to have Sarah Quinn with us this morning, who's hosting our session, senior consultant with strong focus and background on early years education, and we're really pleased to have you today. Sarah brings the joy with her, and we're really pleased to have that. As we, embark on this session today, please be aware that the main session will be recorded. We hope that will help you to revisit particular sections, and we kindly ask you to have your camera on, and to stay on mute. There will be breakout discussions which we won't record, and it just makes it more human if we can have the videos on and mics on to be able to engage in those conversations. And we welcome you to promote this session and support that networking through social media. So do feel free to tag us into any of your posts. You're here today, I'm sure you're got all of a passion for joining this program and aware of the benefits. But we thought it would be helpful just to recap some of the the core benefits from the programme, including enhancing strategic leadership of early years, that development of early years leadership and the collaboration that this project will bring between early years leads and wider SLT. Through the programme, we'll be hosting expert webinars and practice sharing opportunities that you're very welcome to get the wider team involved in. And ultimately, it's that core focus on building strong foundations and improving outcomes for every child. Part of the program as well brings MAT leaders together, and we're hoping to build a community of early years MAT leads to provide that opportunity for practice sharing and to inspire each trust to further develop your network groups within your settings. We will also have opportunities to engage in the work of external experts such as Sarah, and we just really strive for this programme to bring us together as a leadership community. Through the programme, so today we're excited for Sarah, who's going to really energise our thinking and get us really motivated at the launch of this programme. And from here on in, we will embark on a journey of self-evaluation and action planning. You will also have access to our digital community where you can revisit videos, access resources, and use all of that to help you along with this programme and development journey. We really value the opportunities to get together as an early years leader network with trust leaders and early years leaders and to join together in hearing from our experts, but also having the opportunity to share practice across our network as well. As you're aware, the self-evaluation takes us through these key themes, and towards the end of the session, we will guide you through Evaluate My School and where you can find the statements and begin that evaluation process. But each of those evaluation statements are drawn around these key themes: intent, implementation, impact, leadership and management, transition, effective use of adults, and working with learners and their families. And all of our professional learning is built around these key themes as well. We will send these slides to you and we will keep you updated with the dates as we embark on this programme together. As a sort of a next date to have in your diary. So by the 10th of February, we'll be in the position where everyone will have completed their online self-evaluation forms. And I will meet with MAT leaders where we can review those evaluations across your groups of schools. And then the next key date is Tuesday, the 3rd of March in the afternoon at 1 o'clock. And that session will bring early years leaders together in planning for impactful change. That session then leads on to the completion of the action plans, which are due by the 27th of March. Thanks, Fee. And then from there, you will have individualised, personalised feedback on your action plans, including some helpful links to research and reading that might help you with your journey. And then that journey of togetherness continues with meetings with MAT leaders, the professional learning, and then that opportunity to meet in person at the summer conference on the 7th and 8th of July, where we can continue to share in our school journeys and learn together. When you join the digital network, you will find a home within the early year section where you can access recorded webinars and other resources. You will also have access to other areas on the digital community, including the Send folder. we kindly, encourage you to keep an eye on the events page, and you're very welcome to join the wider events that are on offer. For example, we've got some upcoming teaching assistant webinars through our Send work. And other webinars that you can join on to, or recordings that you can access. So once you're on the digital network, we invite you to have a good look around and to see what else might be of support to you as part of this journey together. So today we'll be moving into breakout rooms as part of the session. And Fee has very kindly put all the breakout sessions together and who will be where. And I know on the next slide, there are some further details showing who will be in what room. So do make a note, but also you can relax because Fee will make sure we're in the right place. Thanks, Fee. And then really delighted to be able to hand over to Sarah Quinn, who's going to really promote our thinking today and just energize us at the start of this really exciting program together. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you. It's so nice to see everybody. Lots of happy, smiley faces. I've just had a panic because my share button disappeared, but I found it again. Yay. Okay, so I'm hoping you can see the slides and not the presenter view. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
that's fine, Sarah.
Yep, lovely. As we go through this morning, if there's any questions at all, do feel free to unmute or use the chat function. I'm sure everybody's completely used to doing all of this. So if there's anything at all that you want to ask or clarify, please do give us a shout. And it can be about the program or it can be about the content of the slides. So my name's Sarah Quinn. I'm an education consultant. I have worked in schools, don't worry, in class and leadership. And in fact, sometimes when I'm in the class at the moment with the children, I just think, why am I doing this? I'd rather be here. I'd rather be in the role play area having a play. I know, Robin, I know it's a bit like, oh gosh, really? But actually, I really do really miss being in the classroom, which is really funny. But I think maybe I'm having a bit of a midlife crisis, and I'm thinking I need to go, I need to change my career a bit and get back in so that I've got an excuse to play all the time. So we're going to have a look at different aspects of leadership and particularly early years leadership. And I'm going to talk to you as well about the content of the new inspection toolkit as we go through. If that's okay, I had my inspection training last week, which was very interesting. Anybody had any inspection experience so far this year? Give us a wave, a thumbs up, put something in the chat. I work with Nottinghamshire County Council as well, and they've had a fair few in the last 2 weeks. So that's been quite a learning curve for everybody. So I'm a primary education consultant. I have a team of consultants, and my area is early years. I love training. I did some training for Whole Ed at the Warwickshire conference last year. Absolutely loved it. So if any of you were there, I probably would have seen you. I've been working with Whole Ed now for a couple of years, and I'm delighted to support Whole Ed with the early years school improvement program and the launch event. And as I said, let's keep it nice and informal. If there's anything you want to say, if you want to put any funny little things on the chat, I'm more than happy to receive them. So what are we doing? What we're trying to do is get you to a point where your school improvement, strategy is seen as, oh, I'm sorry, I'm having technology issues here. Can you still see the slides? Yeah.
Yes,
good.
we can.
Okay, thank you. Your school improvement strategy is more like research. So at the moment, when I'm working with schools and we're looking at action planning, One thing I notice is that the same things can come back onto action plans year after year after year. And I'm trying to switch people's thinking so that they're looking at action planning more as research. So we get meaningful, sustainable change that has an impact on children in the long term. So one thing I find on early years action plans continually is outdoor play. The outdoor space is always on an early years action plan. And my view really is that if outdoors is on your action plan more than once, then you failed to improve early years outdoor play last year. So really, we need to be looking at the reasons why you didn't manage to improve that particular area of your work. And quite often it's about the aesthetics of outside, isn't it? And people always say, oh, there's no money and, you know, we can't change it and blah, blah, blah. Well, if there's no money and you can't change it, stop putting it on your action plan and just make the best of what you've got. Do what you can with what you've got. Your outdoor area, it can be, you can spend thousands and thousands on it, but I can guarantee within 2 years, you'll pop it back on your action plan because there's loads of leaves and it looks a bit mucky and it needs a good clean and something's slippy or something's broken. So really think about your action planning as action research. So we're going to think about what's going to make the most difference, the most sustainable, impactful difference to the children that you have in front of you at this time. You're going to think about how you're going to influence change. So how you're going to pull everybody together, and I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a while, how you're going to pull everybody together. You're going to plan a system of change over the year. You're going to do it. You're going to actually do the actions that you've got on your action plan. So this means you have to be incredibly organized. You've got to have something in your diary continually that will take you on that journey across an academic year or 2 academic years, however long your action planning actually runs. You're going to look at the outcomes and then you're going to act. So we're going to use an action research methodology to affect meaningful change in your early years. Does that make sense? I feel like I've sort of garbled my way through that a bit because I was a bit put off when the slides disappeared. Give me a shout if it doesn't make sense and you want me to explain something. But we will come back to it. And you're going to use the self-evaluation tool, which is absolutely superb. So basically, you're going to go through the statements, evaluate yourself, and then look at the areas where you need to influence change for your children. And it's such a simple tool. I can't wait for Carmela to take you through it or Fee to take you through it. It's so easy to use. It's absolutely brilliant. Children are changing. We know this, don't we? Starting points are getting, I'm going to say lower. I am going to use the word lower. Starting points are lower. We've got a higher level of need around SEND. We've got a higher level of need for our disadvantaged children. Lots of places that I work at the moment are saying that behaviour is a huge issue. There are the same old gaps that children are arriving at school with. For example, speech and language tends to be a gap, but we don't have the services that we used to have, do we? We have little access at the moment to some of those great services. So, for example, you can refer to speech and language, but there's no guarantee, is there, that you will get something quickly. So actually, we need to be the people to make that difference for the children. And I do like the logo of Whole Ed, because that's what I say all the time. I've got my little pin here. You see my little badge that I got at the conference. If not us, who? And actually, I say that all the time. If you don't do it, who's going to do it? So I know at the moment that you feel like you're nappy changing, you're toileting children, you're teaching them to feed themselves, you are teaching them to speak, you're teaching them basic things. Quite often supporting the children to sit up straight, to look at a speaker, to listen, to know how they feel. There's an awful lot of stuff that you are trying to do with your children to make sure that they are lifelong learners, to make sure they've got the basic foundational skills and the foundational knowledge necessary to enable them to be successful in the future. I'm sorry, my lovely husband's just brought me a fresh cup of tea. Look at that. Are you jealous? Are you all jealous? Sorry. But they are really different. Give me a nod if you're noticing that children's starting points are really different. I think we've had a little bit of a, oh yeah, look at Rebecca there. Is that your name attached to the right head there? Hello. So yeah, Rebecca's nodding vigorously, shall we say. But children are really changing, so we have to change the way that we teach them. And I have one mantra when I go into school, and it's about fluff-free working. So we're stripping back everything that we're delivering to the children, and we are just delivering what's necessary. There are lots of places at the moment where we're looking at why the good level of development has declined over a couple of years. And a lot of places, it's because they're not precise in what they're delivering to the children. So there's too much in the curriculum. And sometimes it's things that have been drawn down from Key Stage 1. And they're calling it pre-learning for Key Stage 1. Whereas actually, I would rather have a child who has a really solid, good level of development moving into year 1 than a child who's been given some pre-knowledge before they move into year 1. So I'm sure you've heard Ofsted and the DFE talk about foundational skills and foundational knowledge. This is about being very clear about the non-negotiable outcomes for your children at the end of reception. So at the end of early years, at the end of reception, what must they be able to do? And that sometimes can be, in addition to the goal, or slightly different to the goal, depending on the context of your children. But I can almost guarantee now, if somebody gives me a curriculum to look at, I can almost guarantee that I could probably take out at least a quarter of the content. So think about the goal, look at the goal, and then think about that trajectory that takes a child to that goal. And that's the learning, that's the necessary learning, nothing else. So we need to be incredibly focused, fluff-free working, and totally focused on getting the children to the goal. And actually, this way of working as well is useful to have in mind when you're looking at your action plan. What is your intended outcome? What are you hoping the impact will be on the children? Don't get sidetracked. I've been to schools recently where they're inputting their data into 3 different tools, and I've absolutely no idea why. Because time is precious in education, isn't it? And you need to use your time really carefully to have that meaningful impact on the children. So fluff-free working, what is it I want to achieve? What are the steps that are going to get me there? Where can I find the information? And how can I guarantee that I'm going to get that end point? So that's the way we need to be thinking. We know that the DFE have very ambitious targets for the good level of development. And I'm sure many of you have heard of the local targets that you might have in your particular local authority. I know the information has been quite slow coming out to multi-academy trusts. Local authorities have been given the figures, but it's a little bit slower coming out to some trusts, but some authorities have a 73% target for their GLD. Some authorities have a 77% target for their GLD. So the target is really being pushed for children at the end of this year. And I know ultimately the DfE are talking about, well, they were talking about an 85% target. I think they've kind of tempered that to an 80%. What I tend to say is if 70% of your children are keeping up with the delivery of your curriculum, then your curriculum is right for the children, because your curriculum is built around the context of your children, and the trajectory of your curriculum will take the children to the goal, to the end point. But your data is incredibly important. At the moment, you know that the Ofsted framework has changed. We're supposed to say revised, but actually it's totally different, isn't it? So I'm going to say it's changed. It's completely different framework. Previously, inspectors were not really that bothered about data. And they wouldn't look at your internal data. They still don't ask for your internal data, but they want to know where you've got your priorities from. They will want to know why your curriculum looks the way it looks and what you are actually delivering to your children. So context is key. And you get a lot of your contextual information from your data, from your assessment. So use the data, use the assessment information, have a look at what it's telling you about your particular area. At the moment, there's a massive push on attendance, as we know. And attendance is key. In fact, I heard that they are considering bringing out comparison data for sole infant nursery schools and junior schools as well, because at the moment we're measuring infant school attendance against primary school attendance, and it's really not comparable, is it? So think about your attendance rates and think about the impact that that might be having on particular children and how you can mitigate that. I know you're doing lots of work with your families, and you'll be pulling children in for interventions, etc. But again, it's about precision and using time really effectively, and then thinking about where we're hoping to get the children. What are the non-negotiable foundational skills, the non-negotiable foundational knowledge? What do these children need to put them in a good place to move to the next phase of their education? We always have issues with writing. I've absolutely no idea why. I have to be brutally honest with you. If you get that journey right, if you get your curriculum right, we should not have writing as the area of learning that pulls everything down. If you think about when we rewrote the EYFS, I was very keen to have writing as one of the main outcomes rather than a specific area, and have everything feed into writing. Because writing, I think we'll all agree, is the area that is the most cognitively and physically challenging for the youngest children. It takes gross motor, fine motor, it takes speech and language, listening, it takes an element of PSED, understanding the world, comprehension. Everything is wrapped up basically in that journey to becoming a writer. There's a lot of training at the moment around how to get that right. And I'm sure that you've read the DfE writing framework that talks about the importance of transcription and handwriting for our early years children, as well as the composition that I think we do get composition right. We manage to capture a lot of our reluctant writers by making writing really exciting. Anybody doing Greg Bottle's drawing club? Yay, Jenny's doing it. It's great. I absolutely love drawing club, but we also need an element of transcription, because letter formation, once letter formation is incorrect, we've laid a neural pathway that's very hard to rip up and relay. So we have to really think about muscle memory, for example, to make sure that we're getting letter formation right. So what does your data tell you? And you're going to really unpick your data and make sure that we don't get the same patterns occurring year after year after year. Sorry. I'm sure you've had a look at your data from last year. I'm sure you've unpicked your good level. You've had a look at which areas were lower and what you could possibly do about it. Really look at that data on an individual child level as well. So um, we always tend to look at disadvantage, don't we? So we compare our pupil premium to our non-pupil premium. Within the Ofsted framework now, there is a lovely catch-all phrase, and it talks about those children who have barriers to their learning or well-being. So previously, Ofsted would recognise children who fell into certain categories, SEND, pupil premium, for example, or those involved with child protection. Now there is a recognition that there is a layer of disadvantage in our schools that isn't formally recognised. So they talk about children with barriers to learning and well-being. These can be the children that kind of fall under the radar a little bit because they're not entitled to any additional funding. And these are the ones that we need to have that particular focus on. So when you're looking at your data from last year, try and identify those children that might have had the barriers to well-being, the barriers to learning, and what actions you took and what actions you could have taken to ensure their success. It's quite a tough one, really, isn't it? Because we know there are lots and lots of children with fine motor issues, with self-regulation issues. Speech and language is a massive, massive barrier, particularly for children becoming fluent readers and fluent writers. So it is necessary. We do need to look at that data on a very individual level. So when we're looking at the self-evaluation, just as Carmela said, we've got all these areas that we're going to unpick. And we'll do this at the end of the session. We'll start to have a look at how we are unpicking those areas and how well we actually know our early years. So how good are we? How do we know we're that good? What we're going to do to get better? And how will we know when we get there? What's it going to look like when it's successful? And I think sometimes that's the thing we miss. So it could be that writing is on your action plan, and you might have some training. So you're saying, you know, in 2 weeks, we're all going to go on this training, and then we're going to implement a handwriting program, and we're going to make sure all the TAs are trained. We're going to do a program of speech and language. But how do we know what success looks like? What will happen if we've been successful? So what does that end point actually look like? And you'll find within the self-evaluation tool, there are some quite good statements in there that you can use as statements of success. So you can actually reword them and personalize them for you. And that will be your end point. I'm quite picky with action planning as well. I like to have milestones. So if I know that if we're on track, a little bit like children, so if we're on track, what will it look like at October half term? If we're on track, what's it going to look like at Christmas? How will we know that that action plan is actually having the desired impact on our children? And quite often it is about raising the profile of early years in school. So it's looking at early years as the foundation for a child's whole education. And you'll have heard this because it's the way DFE are talking now, and it's the way Ofsted are talking. And I think that's why there's such a huge focus on early years in the new inspection framework, because there is a recognition that children have more and more barriers to their education, and that's this is going to put them on a pathway. When we look at long-term outcomes for our children who don't achieve well in early years, they're not great. They tend to go off track quite quickly. So if there are gaps at the end of early years, we tend to know that that gap is going to remain or widen, which is why we need to be very clear about what it's going to look like. How do we know it's successful? How do we know it's having the right impact on the children? And it has to be a whole school approach. I worked with a consultant who wouldn't go into early years. He used to say it was the People's Independent Republic of early years, and you needed a passport to get across the hard border, which always made me laugh. But there is a huge push now, as you know, for everybody to have information about what's happening in early years. So I'm sure some of your subject leaders have probably asked the question, what does geography look like in early years? I did interview a science leader once who told me that we don't do science in early years. And I was thinking, oh, blimey. So I said, I'm going to just wander away and I'll come back and ask you the same question in a little while, because the majority of what we do in early years is scientific, really, isn't it? So that was quite interesting. We don't do science in early years. And I think it is really, really hard for, oh, that's okay, Sarah, don't worry. It is really, really hard for uh, um, people who are not early yearsy to really understand what is happening in early years. And we do tend to have still, I think, in school, we can get those comments, can't we, that all you do is play in early years. And I love it if anyone says that to me, because I go, yeah, you're right. It's all I do. And I get paid for just playing, which is brilliant. um, and, as we know, there's a lot of science that sits behind play. Play is a necessary function for cognitive development. So, it can be sometimes quite a battle. What we would really push for with your self-evaluation is that it's done by more than just you. So it's not just the early years leader, it's your head teacher, it's other senior leaders as well, maybe your Senko, everybody pulling in all resources so that we have a whole school approach or a whole leadership approach to self-evaluation. Sorry, bit of technical issues again. So you're going to have a few weeks to complete your online self-evaluation. And it is going to be a collaborative process. So make sure that you've got the leaders that you think will can be really supportive for you for that process, the ones that might have some of the information that you need to identify where you're at or where you need to be. And then you'll end up with some great information, which is analysed for you. The reason there's a donut there on the page is because it gives you little donuts, doesn't it, Carmela, which I really like, little chopped up donuts. And it's given, the information is given to you in a number of different ways, but I like the donuts because it's really visible, isn't it? You can really see where your strengths are really quite quickly. So we would really encourage you to think about the areas that are showing up after your evaluation as slightly weaker. And then to think about what's going to have the most immediate impact on the children. Quite often your weaker areas are the hardest areas to tackle. And sometimes we fall into the trap of addressing practical areas very quickly because we can see change really, really quickly. But it might not address the outcomes for your children. So really think about those things. What's going to have a lasting impact on children's outcomes? That's where we need to be in our thinking. So you're going to think about the ultimate outcome. You're going to think about what it's going to look like if it's successful. You might think about just drafting out a statement for yourself. So if teaching is amazing in my early years, this is what it's going to look like. And I tend to like using the 7 key features of effective practice, which we'll come on to in a little while. And sometimes it could be that it's going to take you longer. It could take more than an academic year. So think about what it will look like at the end of this academic year. And then think about what actions you need to take and how you know you're going to be on track to get to the desired end point. But you're not going to be on your own. So don't think, oh, blimey, this is a huge task. You are not on your own. When you've done the Planning for Impactful Change session, you'll see how it all works. You'll see how it all pulls together. And you'll see the online tools that you can access. And you'll get some great feedback as well from experts who are really going to help you to shape that action plan. So you'll get some great advice and some great feedback. And I know that whoever reviews your action plan will give you links as well to some of the information that will help you to move that area forward. So it really is a great tool. It's a great model. So think about using the GROW model. Anybody used that before? Think about the reality, where you are now. Think about what your options might be. So what could you do? And then think about what you're actually going to do. And you will access coaching sessions. Is that still the case, Carmela?
Yeah, we meet with the MAT leaders to review the evaluations, the actions, and then from there are smaller network meetings. But we're there for every step of the journey, analysing the data and the actions and drawing on research.
Yeah. So you're going to be incredibly well supported with this. So it's not going to be a case of, write your action plan, hand it in, and then we get to June and somebody says, how are you doing with your action plan? You think, oh, blimey. It's a whole development process. So one of the things I would really push as well is be completely honest in your action planning, be completely honest in your evaluation. If you're not totally honest, then you're not going to see the improvement that you need. But always keep that goal in mind. What will it look like if it's successful for you in your school? And what's the reality now? What are the options? What could you do? And what will you do? So what's the next step going to actually look like for you? And like I said, there's loads and loads of information for you to access. There's loads of articles. There are webinars, training. There's so much stuff. And like Carmela said, all of the network meetings, the coaching sessions, so that you can keep coming together, keep reviewing, keep asking questions, and looking at everything that might be on offer for you. So, any questions at all? I think we're a little bit ahead of time, aren't we, Carmela?
We are.
So please feel free, put anything in the chat or give us a shout. Oh, look at that. You're all so quiet. Somebody must have something in their head.
Sarah, I will just mention something here so that people know. I've set up the EMS system, the Value at My School, we call EMS, for everybody whose email addresses that I've had. I'm quite aware that some of you, I've only got the head teacher's email. If you've registered for Zoom yourself, then I've picked up your email address and I've added you to it. But if you have come along with somebody else today and you want access, I'll explain in email at the end how you can just let me know who else needs access and add you on, just in case people are wondering. So if that makes sense, hopefully.
Thanks, Fee.
That's perfect. Thank you. Does it include nursery? Yes. So Victoria, hello, I can see you there. Yes, it's about early years. So I know I've talked a lot about your good, lovely development and looking at, where we want the children to be at the end. Where I work with schools and we've got 2-year-olds, nursery, reception, we very much look at what the end point looks like for nursery as well. So how will we know it's successful in nursery? How will we know it's successful for your 2-year-olds? So it's looking at early years as a whole from the start right to the end. So apologies if I've talked about reception too much. Anybody else? Right, Fee, should we have our break? We're a little bit early, about 10 minutes early, I think.
Yep, that's not a problem. So that's the session that's kind of the overview of what everything's about. We'll take a short break now. And then when we come back to we'll do more of the detail of what we're talking about and how we do things. Heads are welcome to stay if they want to, but they also, if they've got early years colleagues here and aren't planning to stay, that's fine. You can drop off as well. But you're obviously welcome to stay. Hopefully that makes sense. So if we come back in quarter of an hour at 10:35, would that work? Give people time to take a break from the screen, go make a cup of tea if you want them, and we'll come back then.
Excellent.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hello, folks. Hope you managed to get a coffee and a biscuit. Are there any questions? Anybody think of anything while they were having a drink? Don't forget you can pop things in the chat as well. We're keeping an eye on that. No. Okay, so this really is a bit of a, oh, got something there. A bit of yep, no problem. Thank you. It's a bit of a tour through a bit of leadership stuff, early years stuff, self-evaluation stuff. And if you have any questions at all, at any point, please do, just like I said before, just shout out. If there's something that I say that you don't get or you disagree with, please just make it known. Because you can guarantee somebody else will be thinking the same or similar. So we're going to have a look at the school improvement programme, and this is an early years leaders guide, but we're going to talk about other early yearsy stuff as well, if that's okay. So play. I mentioned before that quite often people will say, oh, you work in early years, all you do is play. And I will say, yeah, I do actually. And I love it. And there's an amazing piece of research called The Ambiguity of Play that I'll always come back to. and it talks about the impact of play-based learning. And it actually talks about children needing to play up until at least the age of 11, which is the whole of the primary phase, isn't it? And I do believe that if we give them the opportunity to practice and apply the things that we're teaching them in a meaningful way, children are more likely to remember what they've actually been taught. So those of you that are sort of thinking about making your early years really formal, I would really urge you to have a look at some of the research around play. Ofsted talks about play. Their most recent pieces of research it talks about constantly the importance of play, but where play has the most impact, it's well planned, it's thought out really carefully, and it's incredibly purposeful, and links to the characteristics of effective learning. It comes back to play continually. I don't know if anybody's read the most recent Ofsted research. It's actually one of the only pieces of research that's come out of Ofsted that I think is really joined up and makes sense for early years. In actual fact, at the moment, we're in a great situation because the inspection toolkit and the writing framework, the reading framework, the EYFS, all gives the same message. So we have a joined up thought process from those two departments, from Ofsted and the DFE, which is really interesting because I was always convinced they didn't talk to each other. But actually, it seems that they've pulled together and they are really reinforcing exactly the same thing. In fact, if you look at the Ofsted inspection toolkit, if you look at the early years section, you'll see that it is so heavily aligned to the EYFS requirements. If you are meeting all of those EYFS requirements, then you will be at the expected standard under that toolkit. I don't know if anybody has any registered provision on site. So if you run a nursery, a paid for nursery, their toolkit, their inspection toolkit is completely the EYFS. So there's been a little bit of joined up thinking there, which is great. And it is, like I said, it talks about early years practice and it talks about play continually. So play is one of our key tools. It should be the constant for a child. They should know that they're going to use the things that we've taught them within the provision and across the areas of the continuous provision in lots and lots of different ways. But you are planning with a purpose. So somebody can walk around your early years setting and ask you, why this, why now? Why is this here at this time of the year for these children? And you should be able to link it to gaps, barriers, the curriculum, foundational knowledge, foundational skills. So everything that's happening has some kind of impact on the children continually. I still go round early years settings and ask that question, and I still get told because the children like it. And that's really nice, but it's not what we're looking for, is it? We want the children to have joyful and exciting play-based experiences, but be reinforcing and using the skills and knowledge necessary for them to achieve. And it's not okay to have just one area, for example, where we're reinforcing, for example, if fine motor was a concern for you, you might have a fine motor table with a little activity on it, but actually it's not going to capture every child. So what you're going to do is put fine motor opportunities across the whole provision, inside and outside, so that wherever children go and play, they will be reinforcing fine motor development. And that's the beauty of early years. We can think in that broad holistic way to ensure that every child gets the very best opportunity. So I'm going to ask you a big question now. This is a big question for our early years leaders. Why lead? Why are you an early years leader? And you're going to go into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes and you're going to answer this question. So you're going to talk about why you are an early years leader, what led to that leadership position. And you can also share some of the barriers to leadership and some of the joys of leadership as well with your colleagues. Does that sound okay? Marvellous. So, Fee, we're going to go into breakout rooms, if that's okay. Lovely. That's brilliant. Thank you. Can we have some feedback? So can you let us know what kinds of things you talked about? One thing I did forget to say was, can you nominate somebody to give some feedback when you come back? So sorry about that. So room 1, I think, can you remember what rooms you were in? Yeah, no?
They won't be numbered just by 1, 2, Sarah, because they're numbered by trusts.
Okay.
So there was one room for Cabot and one room for Severn. There were 4 rooms for Whitehorse, and then there's the room with our group of mats.
Okay, so Whitehorse, do you want to give me some feedback? We had a room with, is it Bower Hill, Drove, Forest, Sandridge? If you can give me a little bit of feedback, that'd be great.
I might have to just pick on names.
So why did you become a leader? Why did you become an early years leader or a leader? Shall I pick on a name?
Nick Street's going to do it for Severn. Nick, do you want to unmute and tell us?
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
There we go. I've been subtly nominated. Yeah, there was a shared agreement in a passion for the early years ethos and for making a difference right at the start of children's lives, and enjoyment of the opportunity it gives us to work with families.
Yeah.
A strong shared ethos across our early years in our trust for play-based curriculum, looking at ways to make that work around the sort of increasing demands on curriculum that we have now, but sticking back to that play-based.
That's really good. So a real passion for good early years practice.
Yeah, and making a difference at an individual level, and particularly with rising SEND needs. I think, as an early years lead now, you have to have an interest and a passion for making a difference to children's individual SEND needs as well.
Yeah. And I think you've got to be in a place, haven't you, where you can accept that there are huge barriers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you want every child to be successful. That came out from lots of our leaders who spoke, that just real desire for every child to be as successful as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Anyone got anything to add? Did anybody start their career thinking, I am going to be a leader? I'm going to be an early years leader.
We were talking in ours in White Horse Federation Group 1, I think it was, we were talking about how some of us, it wasn't what we started to do, but we generated an interest and real wish to like develop as a team, and getting all this information from everybody else, that helped develop our own knowledge and also our own interests and our own drive for learning. So for example, for me, when I first started, I didn't want to be an early years lead, but as I grow to love the area and the and early years, even more, it made me drive to want to be an early years lead. And then I took my MPQ in early years leadership, and then which then led for me to be an early years lead. And I'm really enjoying it at the moment, and the team that I'm working with, and how we're trying to drive improvements.
Yeah, that's so nice. Thank you, Catherine. Really appreciate that feedback. It's really great when you are in that position, you've chosen to be in that position, and you've had the training, and you've got a real passion for it. There are some people who have just sort of fallen into the position, and have sort of had to try and find their way, because they've perhaps been in a situation where nobody else would do it, or they felt like they couldn't say no. So, and it's surprising how many people in education end up in that kind of situation. It's really interesting. So anybody else want to add anything at all about being a leader?
I'm happy to add from White Horse.
Thank you, Emma.
Too. I think as an early years leader, you are that bridge between your early years team and the senior leadership team. I'm in a very lucky position whereby, as a whole senior leadership team, we are very aware of the early years. And I know in other schools, perhaps they might not have that advantage, but you are the person who's, having that open lines of communication between your early years staff and the senior leadership team. And I think it's having that confidence to challenge each other, but also ensuring that you are approachable. I would like to think that my team would think that I'm approachable, and that not only do I challenge them, but they challenge me. And we have those open discussions as to what we think would work best in our team. And we are constantly evolving and sort of changing our practice.
Yeah, that's great. That's I think that that two-way challenge is something that you're always looking for as well, isn't it? That there's mutual respect, a good relationship, you trust your leader, and your leader trusts the senior leaders, and it's I think it's sometimes quite unique in primary schools to have that that kind of mutual understanding about early years. I think sometimes there's still a little bit of education that sometimes has to happen for senior leaders to really understand the nature of early years and what actually happens in early years. So that sounds great. Thank you, Emma. I'm really glad you've got that that really supportive team around you. It is an interesting choice, I think, sometimes in education, for people to choose to lead. Oh, thank you for Michelle, Group 4. We discussed how we came to be in our roles and our backgrounds. Some are leaders because we are qualified teachers within our settings. Others are SLT in their schools and moving into EYFS to understand what's involved. Others were already early years leads. We discussed how we felt that we can feel isolated from the rest of the school and would like teachers in older year groups to come and spend time with us. However, as early years leads, we're all passionate about making a difference to our children's lives and build a foundation for them moving forward in the educational journey. That's absolutely superb. I think that wraps it up really nicely, Michelle. Thank you for that feedback. I think, yes, I agree. I do think it can be quite isolating, can't it, being an early years leader? And I think even though we've got this joined up picture now from Ofsted and the DfE, we're still operating under different legislation. So the EYFS requirements are related to the Childcare Act, and in the rest of the school national curriculum. We're looking at the Education Act. So we're looking at 2 different pieces of legislation there and trying to meet the requirements of everything. And it can be quite isolating. And I do agree. I think everybody needs to come and have a look and see what's actually happening in early years to fully understand it. So that feedback, Michelle, was really, really good. So why do we lead? There are so many reasons why people lead. There are so many things. One of them is sort of empire building. You know, I used to do an NQT conference every year, and you could guarantee there would be an NQT there who would say, I'm going to be a head teacher in 5 years. And I would think, nah, really, you are just about going to be the master of your craft, you know, in 5 years, if that, if the master of your craft, you are, you know, there's an awful lot to learn to be a good leader, because you are the role model. You're the role model of good, consistent, reliable practice. You're the link between senior leadership team and the rest of your team, and you have to stand shoulder to shoulder with your senior leadership team. You can't hear a message you don't like from your senior leadership team and go and complain to the rest of your team, because that makes the rest of your team feel unsafe. So you have to stand shoulder to shoulder. Especially if early years is a little bit isolated in your particular setting, because we don't want there to be a gap that needs to be bridged. We don't want it to be the people's independent public of early years. We want it to be seen as an essential part of the school. So I love this piece of research here from Blanchard and Johnson about what makes a great leader. I'm hoping the slides moved on. Yes. So that sense of personal responsibility for the general outcome of your efforts, and a lively intellectual curiosity and interest in everything, because everything really is related to everything else, and therefore to what you're trying to do, whatever it is. So there's that real joined up picture of leadership, and I like that idea of a lively intellectual curiosity, and that's going to feed into your action planning really well. You have to have that intellectual curiosity to treat your action planning like action research. You need to genuinely want to find things out to make things better for your children. Optimism, which I know is quite difficult sometimes in school, to remain optimistic, but it's absolutely essential, because your team are relying on you to lead them. And whether you've got one other person in your team or 50 other people in your team, they are looking at you as the role model of behavior, of great practice, but also of the culture, the expected culture in your school. And I know we all know that it's all about culture, it's all about relationships. But if we don't get those relationships right, people start to feel unsafe. You think about the children. If a member of staff is consistently miserable with a child, that child will stop going to that member of staff and start to feel bad about themselves and unhappy. And actually we can learn a lot from the way children respond to other people, because that's the way our instincts respond to other people. I mean, we're quite lucky as adults, because we can shrug things off and sort of think, oh, well, perhaps, you know, Betty's had a bad morning, so I'll just let Betty come round a little bit. And children can't necessarily do that. They kind of take on bad feelings and think that it's about them, and, you know, it can really damage their self-esteem. But think about how great things are when you've got an optimistic, curious leader. And that feeds into the next one, really, a genuine interest in what other people think and why they think that way, which means you have to be at peace with yourself for a start. So you've got the conviction of your own thoughts, your own feelings, your own practice, but you are always interested. You've got that lively intellectual curiosity. You're very interested in what other people think and why they think that, and you can engage in professional conversations with them. You've got a responsibility for envisaging future that's different from a straight line projection of the present. Trends are not destiny, and I love that. So when people say, you know, writing's always poor, I think, no, we're not going to accept it. We're going to absolutely kick against it and use our lively intellectual curiosity, use our sense of responsibility, use our genuine interest in what other people think, and have that optimism that we can make a difference. We can make it different for our children. A hunch that most risks are there not to be avoided, but to be taken. And it's so interesting at the minute because we have risk averse children, don't we? We have this, we've got this strange parenting style at the moment called snowplow parenting. Has anybody heard of this? We're no longer helicopter parenting, we're snowplow parenting. So we're removing any risk out of the pathway of every child and making sure they are constantly safe and constantly happy. And that includes, you know, if they're being told off at school, it includes parents coming in to tell you off for telling their child off. And, you know, this tends to be happening more and more, I think, at the moment. So I know that for you, taking a risk can be quite difficult because you think that children get one chance at this. They get one chance at every hour, every day, every week, every term. But risks are there to be taken, and things will come up in the research that you do around your action planning that you think, actually, is this right? Is it right for the children in front of me? And you need to think about really carefully where you're going to find that information. It could be that it's a strategy that's being used in other schools. So you might go and have a look at it and talk to them about their assessment information and what it's actually telling them. It could be that you want to, you know, introduce it into one of your classes and just see what the impact might be. But you are definitely encouraged to be risk takers. Those people that take the risks, those well thought out risks, are quite often the people that see the biggest success. And the next one, I always say this to new head teachers, brand new head teachers, I tend to go in and they'll be very excited about the whole thing, and then the next visit I go in and they're a bit like, oh, everything's a nightmare. We've got to get to that point where we have that mindset that crises are normal, tensions are promising, complexity is fun. That is your standard. Okay, so if you think about what I was saying initially about starting points, children are changing, starting points are much lower, there are more barriers, there are more gaps. That's not going to change. So that is the norm. We're looking at that level of normality. So anything that is worse than that, we can say it's a crisis. But at the moment, that is our level of normality. And a realization that those who want to be leaders must not succumb to paranoia and self-pity. You've got to get to a point, I think, where you accept that your team are talking about you. And don't worry about it. Let them vent, because that's what we all do in education, isn't it? You know, quite often you'll vent about the head teacher or the geography leader, or I'm picking a lot on geography leaders today. I'm sorry about that. So you'll you know, talk about certain things to get them off your chest, and you have to accept that that will be happening to you as well. There's a fair few head teachers that I've been asked to work with who I call office bound. They've become office bound. They don't want to go out and see what's happening in their own school because they're so paranoid about being talked about. And I think in leadership, you have to accept people won't like some of the things that you do or say. But like I said, you stand shoulder to shoulder with your senior leaders and you give the messages that need to be given, and you use all of these strategies in front of you: optimism, interest, responsibility, risk taking, personal responsibility, intellectual curiosity. You use all of those strategies in front of you with no ego, and you look at those little bods in front of you and think, I'm doing it for them. This is all about them. And it is challenging. It can be challenging. There are lots of challenges in early years leadership. I always used to end up with one or two members of staff who were, you know, the ones that have been there forever, and we've always done it this way. And they'll just keep saying, but we've always done it this way. I don't want to change, but we've always done it this way. And I'm like, we've always done it this way. And look, we've always got these terrible outcomes. So, so we're going to change it for the sake of the children. And you end up as well, I think, with, you can end up with people who are a little bit miserable. You can end up with people who are very resistant to change. But you can also end up with people who are over enthusiastic and really sometimes don't get what education is about. So I'm sure you've had people as well that you've worked with where they've come bounding in and said, I've seen this on Pinterest, can we do it? And you're like, oh, it doesn't really align with our curriculum. And then before you know it, you've got 58 penguins that all look the same because, you know, the teachers cut everything out for them and stuck it all together. So it can be incredibly challenging. Also, if you've got strategies that you want to implement that senior leaders really don't have any interest in, that it can be quite difficult to change their thinking. So it can be a challenging role. So what does a good leader do to get people on board, to take them forward, and to actually affect change in the future? I don't know if anybody's seen Leadership Matters or been to any of the conferences for Leadership Matters, but this is a great model because it's about looking at that strategic future. What is it we actually want? What will it look like when it's perfect, when it's absolutely brilliant for every child? What will that look like? And then it's about getting the relationships right so that we can engage people and take them along with us. Once we've got people engaged, we've got that future picture, we know exactly what it needs to be, and we've got people engaged, we can get the right people doing the right tasks that will actually get us to that point. So it's about pulling all of those things together. That's what a great leader does. They have that picture of the future. They get all the people on board by building and sustaining meaningful relationships. And then they look at the tasks that need to be completed to take us into that perfect future. And that can be quite difficult. There can be quite a lot of challenges there. I think for me, one of the things that I've learned over my career is the importance of relationships with children, relationships with your team, relationships with parents. It is all about relationships. And I actually did a qualification in professional consulting, and a lot of it was about, they call it being a chameleoning yourself to be the person who will bring that person along. So you might be slightly different with Betty than you are with Phil, because Betty needs a different kind of relationship from you, and Phil is quite happy to just be told, you need to do this next. Whereas Betty might need a little bit of gentle stroking and, you know, nurture and love and comfort. And you find this when you do things like performance management. You know, some people will ask about, you know, how's the family? How was your holiday? And that's because they know that that person in front of them needs that comfort to secure the relationship. But Phil, for example, will sit down and you'll be able to say to Phil, right, you did that well, but that wasn't great. So we need to work on that bit. And Phil's quite happy with that, and we'll get up and walk out feeling very satisfied. So it's about knowing the person, know them well, and build that professional relationship and use what you know about them to make them feel really comfortable. If you think about Maslow's hierarchy of need, that doesn't just apply to children, it applies to every human being. You know, and one of those very basic levels is about safety, and to enable people to do their very best, to have the self-esteem, to self-actualize, to see themselves as effective practitioners in the future. They need to feel safe. And part of safety is the relationship, getting that strong relationship, getting that relationship right. And it's not just about the team that you're managing, it's about the team that manages you as well. So make sure that you are working on relationships all around you. I can't remember who it was that said it, but was it Nicola who's, I can't remember, but getting that whole relationship right so that everybody understands where you're heading and what that future will look like when it's perfect. Getting everybody on board. We talk about people being on the bus, don't we? And getting everybody on board. They won't get on your bus if they don't like you. They're more likely to kick against you. And I'm not saying you can't give tough messages. You can, you know, that you've always got to be soft and gentle and kind. You can give really tough messages in a really meaningful way if you get that relationship right. So it is all about bringing those people along with you. And having alignment. So aligning your strategy with your goal. Organizations quite often know why they're what they're doing. They know how they're going to do it, but we need to know why. And this comes back to your values. So one of the things that I would try and do is pull your team into the why. So knowing why you're actually taking these actions and trying to change something and aligning it with your vision and values. So whatever your vision and values are in school, look at that ultimate goal and align it with your vision and values. And that should give you the why we're actually trying to do it. You'll be surprised how much impact using vision and values can actually have on drawing people along with you. And the other thing to keep coming back to as well is the 7 key features of effective practice. Is everybody aware of this? Yeah, I've put it on a really nice background. I've stolen this. I think it's from Salford, LA or something. But when you look at it in Development Matters, it's it looks a bit boring. But if you put it on something pretty like that, everybody thinks it's great. So those 7 key features of effective practice, I come back to all the time. They are so so important and really pull everything together. So number one, the best for every child. Are we actually doing the best for every child? Are we making sure that every single child gets the very best outcome. And if you look at that section, it's really about your disadvantaged children. It's about those children entitled to additional funding, your SEND children, those with barriers through difficult experiences at home, those with barriers to well-being, those with barriers to learning. But that first statement, all children deserve to have an equal chance of success, is absolutely key. And it's about tailoring the model, isn't it? We talk about adaptations and adaptations to the way that we deliver the right curriculum to children. And Ofsted and the DFE will talk about, you know, if you get it right for the most disadvantaged, you're getting it right for everybody. And that is absolutely true. So before, when I talked about looking at individuals, it's about this, getting it right, the best for every child, making sure every single child gets the very best education. And then high quality care. One thing that I'm really keen on is making sure that every practitioner, every single teacher has knowledge of child development, so they know the steps necessary to get children to that desired endpoint. There is a free child development course on the DFE website. If you just Google DFE child development, there's 12 sections to it. So if you've got any new members of staff and they're not really sure on that the milestones in child development, it's quite a good little course to put them on. The curriculum, that's your top level plan of everything that your children need to learn. And I think the final bullet point under there is the most important one. So depth in learning is more important than covering lots of things in a superficial way. Make sure your curriculum is precise. Make sure you have that very clear trajectory that takes the children to the goal. Pedagogy, how we're going to get them there. And it is about using all of your learning environment, making sure that those objectives are peppered through your learning environment to make sure you're capturing every child, so they all practice the things that they need to be practicing. And then assessment. So how do we know? That children are moving on in their education? And this is about constant noticing. It's not about the online tests or anything like that. It's about your constant noticing. And you can see why it's important that all your practitioners have a good knowledge of child development, because they need to notice when something's going right or where something's going wrong, and they need to be able to communicate that information to you accurately so that you can do something about it, so you can feed it into your pedagogy and feed it into your curriculum. Then we've got one of the most important areas, self-regulation and executive functioning. So this is really about building a person. It's giving every single child the ability to focus their thinking, monitor what they're doing and adapt, regulate strong feelings, be patient, and bounce back when things get difficult. And we've had so many programs in school around metacognition and feelings and all sorts of things. In fact, I've got a program that I'm put into schools called the behaviour curriculum, and it is about building executive functioning. It's about building 8 executive functions so that children can be organised, they can self-monitor, they can talk about their emotions, they can recognise emotions in others, they do actually need to be taught these things. Ofsted were very clear in their research recently that actually we do need to be teaching children how to self-regulate and build executive functioning. And then, of course, your partnership with parents. So parents are the first and most enduring educator of their child. So you really need to build that relationship so that the children have a meaningful experience across the board. So at the moment, I'm suggesting that schools go through each of those 7 areas and look at what they're doing. What does your practice look like under each of those bullet points? And is there anything that that you do that's above and beyond, what makes you unique. And once they've done that, they can pull together a rationale behind all the choices that they've made. So we're going to start looking at your self-evaluation. There are the 7 headings there that you're going to look at. And I'm going to ask you to just think about what self-evaluation might look like under each of these headings. So self-evaluation should be purposeful, meaningful, context-informed, evidence-informed, collaborative, and connected. So in the next few slides, we're going to look at examples of the online self-evaluation tool. We're going to use a breakout room for one of them so that you can talk about using these headings and how it might support you in your self-evaluation. I've got a question slide there, but unless you've got anything burning, I think it'll sort of come together for you in the next couple of minutes. So I may not ask you, unless you've got anything on the tip of your tongue. Anybody? No. So don't forget about using the action research model, and the purpose of your action plan needs to be shared. So the purpose of the evaluation needs to be shared, and it needs to lead to action. So whatever we're choosing to make as a focus in our action plan, we need to have a really clear reason behind it, and it needs to lead to some kind of change. So for example, if you've identified staff interaction as an issue, let staff come along with you, let them observe the current situation, let them identify what good interaction might look like, so that they are signed up and it's going to have a meaningful impact eventually on the way they actually interact. Okay, so we're going to go into breakout rooms if that's okay, Fee. Is Fee there? Have we lost Fee?
I say, it looks like she's disappeared.
It does, doesn't it?
Now I'm here, sorry, my computer's frozen. I'm clicking desperate background. Not a problem. Hold on, I should put you into breakout rooms. There's the question this time, the indoor and outdoor environment.
Yes, I want you to look at the indoor and outdoor environment is stimulating and encourages children to safely explore risks and challenge their own learning. And I want you to think about it in relation to purposeful self-evaluation. So what's going to lead to action? Okay, and then if you can nominate somebody to pop a bit of feedback in the chat maybe, or speak, that would be great. Hello, folks. Would you like to give me some feedback then? You were thinking about the indoor and outdoor environment, stimulate, encourages children to safely explore risks and challenge their own learning, and purposeful. What would lead to purposeful action? Ash?
I'm happy to go for group one. We said that knowing the end point is really important, and especially if you've got reception children with nursery children, because they're going to have different starting points, different ending points. So being aware of that, but also relaying that information to all members of staff so that everyone in the team, whether you are indoors or outdoors, is aware of what the purpose of those areas is. We spoke about fine motor, that might look ever so slightly different for those different aged children, but ensuring that we have provided for them, and that that is relayed to staff. Same with the risk taking, understanding with your team understanding that there has to be an element of risk for children to develop their risk assessing skills, and that you're all on the same page. I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but I have seen members of staff ask children not to do something when you sort of think, well, actually, I think that is that is something that would be good for them to practice. But just being open and, you know, transparent about that and sharing that with the team so that we're all on board.
Absolutely, Sophie. I think that is a really key point there, isn't it? I've got is it Maeve?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the statement was too broad. It needed to be more focused action for it to be meaningful. Focusing on the cohort and what the data is saying. I think yes, absolutely. It is about what the data is telling you so that you can focus those meaningful actions and you know, have that outcome in mind. Anybody else want to give us some feedback?
I don't mind feedbacking from our group. We
Thank you.
looked at it more in terms of like a reflection of our environments. So we were just talking about how recently we actually spoke about risk taking in my school, about whether we've got the opportunities for risk both inside and outside. And on reflection, it was something that we probably hadn't pre-planned, and we don't really have a lot of opportunities that we plan in for our outdoor provision or our indoor. So we said we'd make more of like a purposeful, conscious decision to try and plan that in more when we do our planning, and taking opportunities for the in the moment risks. As we said, although we could pre-plan it, it's not something that always technically happens in a planned way. Some of the best risk taking is when it's in the moment, and like your adaptive teaching strategies and changing what you're doing to promote those risk taking challenges. We also spoke about the progression, because obviously in my school and another one in our breakout rooms, we've got a time for two provision, and we've got preschool and reception, and we noticed that it's quite tricky to try and distinguish the progression through that, and where's our starting point and where's our end point, and how are we going to progress rather than doing the same things. We've got another school in the breakout room that's obviously in our silo with Hells Valley Trust, and they at Hurst Hill have a forest school provision which they utilise for risk taking, which was quite nice to hear, because it gets the cogs thinking of how we could also try and learn from that and try and implement that in the provision. Because although we have a forest school provision, it probably isn't utilised as best as it probably could be. So that sort of got a bit of a conversation started in my own mind about going back to like my year group partner and talking about how can we pre-plan that and utilise the space that we've got to promote risks. So that was more so in the risk-taking aspect. And then we also looked at indoor environment. Is it stimulating? And we spoke about doing one thing rather than trying to improve all areas of provision, so like focusing on one and building on it. So I know like in my classroom, my storytelling area, due to like space and things, or my small world area, probably isn't as stimulating and inviting as it could be. So just trying to be reflective on that and decide how we could make it more purposeful and how we could tailor it to our children's needs, and let the data sort of support us in that, and what adaptations we could make to be able to promote progress for our children in terms of EAD and understanding the world and communication language and all those aspects.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Anissa, is it? Thank you so much for the for that feedback. I think that was really detailed. It sounds like you had quite an interesting discussion, but I think you're right. I think focusing on one area is really important, rather than thinking, wow, I've got this whole provision that I need to improve, because it seems an overwhelming task, doesn't it? So knowing what that area is going to look like, and knowing what it's going to look like when it's purposeful and is going to give you the right impact is really, really key there. Anybody else want to give us any feedback? You're probably ready for a cup of tea, aren't you? Should we have a 10-minute comfort break? Is that okay with everyone? Yeah,
sounds good.
Super. So if we come back at 12, is that okay?
Sounds
wonderful.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
See everybody again shortly.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Right, we'll have a look at some more areas of the self-evaluation, if that's okay. So we talked about under intent, we looked at the indoor and outdoor environment and thought about purposeful. So what would make it purposeful purposeful self-evaluation that leads to action. The next thing we're going to look at is meaningful. So what's going to make your self-evaluation meaningful? And actually, there's one of the donuts from the tool. So you can see there that you can quickly pull out which areas might need to be worked on, and one of the things that I would really suggest is that you look at the national data. So what does national information tell you, and can you actually use some of that information, which you've already talked about? Can you use that information to really drill down and find those areas that need the most focus? Sorry, I lost my words then for a minute. Right, so thinking about meaningful evaluation, and looking at implementation. So looking at your pedagogy, the learning activities provided for children in the early years across the academic year and over a day consistently match the aims of the curriculum. Do staff know? And somebody's just said this, I think. Do all your team know why things are there and what they're actually for? Do staff know how the activities link to the curriculum? Do adults have good understanding of your curriculum, child development, the child? Do they know about effective interaction and how that might support children in making progress? Do they use any kind of specific methodology in the environment? So do we look at teach it, practice it, apply it? What do the adaptations look like for your SEND children or for children with barriers? How are you using the characteristics of effective learning? So we're thinking very much about the children. When we're looking at meaningful evaluation, we're thinking about what will the impact be on the children. So we've got purposeful evaluation, that's going to lead to action, and then we've got meaningful evaluation, which is going to actually have an impact on children's outcomes. Now, I think the next one is so incredibly important. It has to be context informed. So every action that you take is going to have an impact on the children based on their strengths, gaps and barriers. So it's got to be absolutely thought about in terms of the starting points of your children. So through the delivery of a well-planned, child-led and challenging curriculum, the children leave the early years foundation stage as independent learners with transferable skills needed to start Key Stage 1. So children reach a good level of development, they're independent, they have some good skills that will enable them to be effective learners when they move through into Key Stage 1, because your evaluation has been context informed. So you've used the knowledge of your children in your context to find the most meaningful changes or improvements that need to be made to ensure that all children move into Key Stage 1 with those transferable skills and as independent learners who've reached a good level of development. So I think we do that anyway. I mean, we're so used to at the moment looking at the context, looking at strengths, gaps, barriers. We really focus on that context-informed evaluation. So if you can think about those three things: what makes it purposeful, what's going to lead to action, what makes it meaningful, so it has a direct impact on the children, what makes it context-informed, how is it based on your children. So if you're working across a mat, it is very unlikely that you're going to have the same action plan for early years, because even if you're just down the road, the context of your children will be different. And it has to be based on your children. And I do think we are getting much better at contextualizing action plans. And then, is it evidence informed? So are we using our direct evidence? Are we using assessment information? And are we using anecdotal evidence? Are we talking about what we've seen and how we've interpreted it? And one of the things that I would say here is be factual. Think about what the facts are telling you, particularly, I think, when you're looking at not just your evaluation, but looking at the actions as well that you want to take to actually move your practice forward. So we'll look at this under leadership and management. Effective self-evaluation leads to concerted and successful actions to improve provision and outcomes for all children. So what does the evidence actually tell you needs to be improved? Is your self-evaluation, is it accurate enough? Is it context informed? Is it meaningful? Is it purposeful? And is it going to drive improvement for all of your children? And really good really good action planning should lead directly to those meaningful improvements in a very systematic way. It's like delivering a curriculum. If you've planned it across the academic year, we should see step-by-step progress that will take you to that meaningful outcome. And like I said, we're going to use evidence. So you need to be looking at your assessment data, and you need to be funneling from national to school to cohort, and asking, where are the gaps? What does that information actually tell us? And like I said, you know, the school down the road might have slightly different focused areas from you. One of the things we really need to think about, like I said at the beginning, is things like attendance. So it's not just about additional funding, who's getting additional funding. We're looking at attendance as well. We're looking at those barriers to learning or well-being. And you might want to consider boys and girls. We know that boys and girls do actually learn in quite different ways, and there is no reason why, just like there's no reason why children shouldn't achieve in writing, there's no reason why we should have a gender gap. If you are tailoring your pedagogy, if you're tailoring the implementation of your curriculum correctly, and the content of your curriculum, we should be motivating all children to get to where they actually need to be. So does disadvantage matter? It does matter, and it does matter where you live as well. So if you look there, Northwest is right at the bottom. East Midlands, which is where I am at the minute, we're sort of sitting halfway, and then inner London, the children do much better, or historically have done much better. So it's quite interesting looking at that level of disadvantage and how it relates to location. So just have a minute to think about what your data tells you. And I'm going to show you. Sorry, I've just got a comment from Catherine here on the NPQ EYL shared an action plan. An action plan may not run over the course of a year, as evidence may reflect that your goals and actions need to be further refined, or the goal youth may take longer to achieve and should be planned carefully. Yes, that is absolutely something I agree with, that our action planning is flexible, responds to the impact of actions taken. Like I said, if you're taking a risk and you're actioning something and you're not entirely sure how it's going to work for your children, it might go off on a tangent and you might have to bring it back and action something slightly different. In fact, I am looking at development planning now, like whole school development planning, as running over a couple of academic years, because mainly because the capacity of senior leaders is fairly stretched in a lot of schools. So to see that impact over one academic year is quite a big ask. But yeah, as Fee said, we'll cover the action planning in the second session, and Fee and Carmela are going to give you a whistle-stop tour of the EMS as well in a few minutes. Okay, so what does your data tell you? And I'm going to show you something that might make you go, ah, in a minute. This is from a school that I worked with where they were looking at developing their assessment information, and I'm not suggesting you do it like this, but it's interesting, some of the anomalies that it actually threw up. So you can see here that same child has stayed at the same point for the whole year. Is it the same child? Do we need to have a look and see what's happening for that child? Then we've got 30% change into 36 with no apparent shift in the high points. Of some children made negative progress. And then, is this one child, has this child done well enough? Where did that child actually come from? Why aren't there more children there? So it is really sort of unpicking what that information might be throwing up for you, and then looking at initials so you can identify individual children and what's happening for those individual children. So what's happening for WQ, who's just stayed steadily here for the whole time. What's the journey for A, B, C, and D, who seem to have gone backwards? Where does PO start and end? So we've got PO here. And the journey for IL here as well, who seems to have bounced back again. So it is drilling down for individual children. What are the barriers? Why is that happening for those individual children? And of course, you don't have to fill spreadsheets in, because you know your children incredibly well. Rebecca, did you have a question?
Hello, we were just brainstorming because we've got a number of children, because you were showing on the data the percentage. We've got a number of children who are not on track. And I feel like since the kind of 2021 change, it's harder to demonstrate the personal progress they may have made, because we don't have those bands to demonstrate where they've moved. I've been looking at this week the kind of DEYO, the differentiated outcomes, but that's not something we've really discussed within the trust. But I was just hoping to ask everyone if they are using those differentiated outcomes at all to demonstrate the personal progress that individuals may have made, because it's obviously very difficult to demonstrate that on ARBA if they're not on track and they remain not on track, but that same child might have made really good personal progress. Yeah, that really.
Thank you. Anybody want to answer? Share information?
I can answer because as part of the trust there. So
thank you.
So I mean, it might be a separate conversation that we have after this forum, but of course, there's always going to be other ways that you record that through learning journeys, tapestry, case studies of progress. So there's loads of ways that you can look at that progress. So it's not just a straight score on Arbor. Obviously, that's the score that we would look at in terms of that progress. But if you feel they've made lots of personal progress, there's lots of different ways that you can record that. But I think that's probably a conversation away from this forum, unless anybody else has got any other suggestions there.
I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I use with schools to look at small steps of progress. It takes you from a 2-year-old right the way through to the end of reception. If I send that to Fee, could you send that on to people? It might be something that you could have a look at. It gives you milestones for the end of each half term. And then if you open up the broader sheets for every single area of learning, it gives you the small steps of progress that children might be making. But I'm quite happy to send that on to you if that's useful. Not something I would suggest you use for every child, but it could be something that you use for those children that have barriers, so that you can start to demonstrate some of those small steps of progress.
I mean, okay. We on ours we did we have like a Word document, and after we do our data, we look through who we predicted where they are, and we talk about where we need to do to support them to make that progress, and then we have a table of what kind of things we can do to support them, and then we just track it after each data drop that we do. I mean, that's just what we do, just to help us as teachers, just to put our head into what do we need to focus on specifically to support these children. And that's just the document that we used like previously, many years ago, that we just use because it's just helpful to us.
Yeah. And I think I think those conversations with your team are key, aren't they? You know, so because everybody has a different relationship with children, so you know those children in really different ways. So sharing the information is really, really important. Sitting down, going through them, identifying those that perhaps haven't made the progress you thought they were going to make and didn't reach the milestone, so you can then, you know, put something in place that will support them. Okay, and collaborative. So your self-evaluation isn't just you, it is everybody. Everybody is involved in evaluating all areas of your provision, and most importantly, senior leaders and your SENCO if possible, so that everybody is feeding into that whole program of change and improvement. And then finally, connected. How connected? I'm sorry, these the slides are the wrong way around. I'm really sorry, but I'm just going to talk about connected. So how connected is your action planning? Is it feeding into whole school priorities as well? Because, you know, we don't want it to be the independent republic. It needs to be the foundation for your school, so that children are moving on with the skills that they need to access the next phase of their education. So if we look at that in relation to transition, before the children move from the foundation stage into Key Stage 1, staff need to exchange information about progress, ability, SEND needs, any information relevant to the wellbeing and development of individual children, and information is used to group children, plan the curriculum, and set future targets. I used to do this thing with my staff, that when a new cohort started in the school, we'd do a staff meeting and take the whole staff through every single child, And that sort of gave a little bit of a message that these children belong to everybody. It's not just, you know, they're not just the nursery cohort that belong to the nursery teacher. They're a nursery cohort that belong to the whole school. And you can talk about siblings, and you can share information, you know, contextual information about children as well. So that was a really, really useful staff meeting where everybody got involved in talking about the early years children. And I found as well that people would ask afterwards, you know, oh, how is such a body doing? Or, you know, have you noticed X, Y, and Z with, you know, particular siblings? So it kind of brought everything together, which was really nice. Okay, so I'm going to skip past that. So thinking about all of those areas and pulling all of those areas together, is your self-evaluation purposeful? Does it lead to action? Is it meaningful? Is it linked to impact on children? Is it based on context? Is it evidence informed? Is it collaborative? Is everybody involved in self-evaluation? And does it link to whole school priorities? And I've linked that to effective use of adults in the setting. So all adults have dedicated non-contact time that's used for liaison. This ensures all staff have clear understanding of concepts, vocabulary, and information to be covered in learning activities and continuous provision. So thinking about the purpose of that, thinking about whether it's meaningful, it's going to have an impact on children. Is it context informed? Is it evidence informed? Is it collaborative? And is it connected to whole school priorities? So that gives you a quick tour of the methodology that sits behind the self-evaluation. So in a second, Carmela and Fee are going to actually show it to you so you can see what it looks like live, if that's okay. And one of the things that I'm just going to finish on is this book here. Has anybody used this book? Have you seen it before? Okay, anybody been to the Pike Place Fish Market in Seattle? Bit of a random question there. It's very famous. If you go on YouTube and watch the videos, it's absolutely brilliant. There's a video, one particular video that I love, where there's a woman being chased with a bloke who's got an octopus, and he's like chasing her with this octopus, and they throw the fish at each other and they catch the fish, and it's just brilliant. But these guys at the fish market, they've got such optimism and positivity, and a management consultant was watching them and managed to filter their philosophy down into 4 stages. And this for me is perfect for bringing people along. So when we talked about the 3 circles, we looked at what the goal is, we looked at the team, and then we looked at the actions. This helps you to bring the team along. So the first principle that sits behind this is play, and it's perfect for school because we play with the children, but we also want to have fun with each other. And it's not about being silly all the time. It's about being positive and being optimistic and enjoying what you do. And I think you can get sort of bogged down in stuff, can't you, in schools quite easily. And yet there's so much joy in a school. And you know, when you think about the impact that you have on those tiny little bods every single day, it is significant. They're looking at your facial expressions, looking for smiles, looking for eye contact. I always think as well, we should use love languages more. Has everybody heard of love languages? I know you probably think, oh, she's going off on a weird tangent. I am on a tangent, but it is relevant. So love languages, there's words of affirmation, there's time, there's touch, there's gifts, and you can work out a child's love language by looking at how they communicate with you. So those children that make you a picture and bring you a picture, they respond to gifts because they're gift givers. So if you give them stickers, they will forever do anything you ask them. Those that want to sit on your knee, they like physical contact. So they they will respond to hugs and, you know, stroking and all of those different things. And then we've got words of affirmation. So they're the ones that come and tell you how lovely you look. They like your shoes. You all have them, don't you? They're the ones that respond to, well done, you've done really well today. I'm really pleased with what you've done. To have a look at love languages, because it really helps you to build relationships, and not just with children, with parents and with other adults as well. So play, make everything positive, make it as optimistic as you possibly can, have fun, bring a bit of joy to your day. Then the next principle is to be there, and this is about being present. So you're in the moment with the people that you're with. You're not thinking about what you're having for your tea, you're not thinking about doing your assessment or going to a staff meeting. You are absolutely giving them 100% of your attention. Children can spot whether an adult is being genuine with them from the age of 2. Which always blows my mind. They are masters of reading micro expressions, whereas we become a little bit more filtered, and we don't necessarily tune into micro expressions as much as children do. But you can always tell when somebody's not fully present and you're having a conversation with them, can't you? The next principle is to make someone's day, make them feel like the most important person in the world. And you'll be amazed at how quickly this supports you to calm parents down in particular. You know, those irate parents, I used to call them the Jeremy Kyle parents, that come in wagging a finger ready to have a go at you. If you can give them full attention, and show them that you think that what they're saying is really important, it brings them down very, very quickly. But the making someone's day for children is significant, making them feel like they're the most important person in the world, particularly those that have tricky behavior at the moment. Grounding those children, putting your hands on their shoulders, telling them you're really glad that they're there, and you really love them, and I would always use the word love with children, can have such a massive impact on their connection with you. And then choose your attitude. So, you know, you can come into school miserable, and we've all got members of staff that we've worked with or we're working with at the moment who have that kind of negative, you know, everything's a nightmare kind of attitude. But you can choose to drop it. And I used to say to my staff, leave your baggage at the door. Come in ready to exude joy and optimism and positivity, because the children only get one chance at this, don't they? They get one chance every hour, every day, every week, every term, and it's our responsibility to make it as joyful and impactful as possible. So that's Fish, and I love Fish. I think it's so easy to read. It takes a few minutes, and it just, I don't know, it just inspires you to try really hard to build those impactful relationships. So we talk about, you know, impacting on the children, but at Whole Education we also want to impact on you. So we're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of need. What do we need to do to make sure that you get to that top peak, and that you have the empowerment to make those meaningful changes in your own setting. And it is about having a team around you, having people around you that you can work with, that you've got a good relationship with, that you can trust, that you can be honest with, that you can go to for professional understanding, and that's what this whole process will do. It will get you to a point where you feel empowered. You feel so empowered you can make that really meaningful change for your children. So that's the end of my input now, and I'm going to hand you over to Fee and Carmela, who are going to show you this magical tool.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think we're all going away now to order a copy of Fish. So thank you for everything
Don't
you've
just
shared.
Google fish, because you'll get all sorts of weird things that come up.
Thank you for everything you've shared and for the thinking that you've promoted. And Fee is going to give us a tour of Evaluate My School so that we can go away from this session and hopefully feel confident in how to complete those evaluations. So thank you, Fee.
Okay, so this is the Evaluate My School tool. For everybody, I've sent you login details. I've had your details. Whitehorse Federation, yours come from Lisa from the trust itself, because you've got your own EMS license. If you need extra people, please don't share your login details. Just ask for another login. They get their own personalised login to this, because then you can see who's written what. If you start logging in as other people, it gets confusing for you later on. Essentially, this is what you'll see when you first come in. There'll be no scores in there. And this first phase before the next event is simply doing the self-evaluation. We really strongly advocate you do it with somebody else, with your head, or if you are the head, and with somebody else in the school. So you are having that as a sort of conversation. It probably takes about an hour. It's not too long. And essentially you open up each section and you are deciding where you feel that you are between starting and excellent against each one of these questions. And so you simply click on a score, and as you'll see, the circles up here start adding it up. So what you will see at your school level is the numbers on there. If you're a MAT leader, I'll show you something else in a second, because you see collective of all the scores. You can, if you want to, in this first little comments icon here, if you want to add anything there for you, as in something to help you remember why you thought that, or anything like that, you're welcome to. We don't need you to. So that is just a functionality that's helpful for you to put something there for later on. And you'll go through these questions. You'll see that these are the different sections. And as you start filling in, there's about 8 or 9 questions in each one, or statements in each one. And you're just deciding at school where you feel you are. One of the most important things is to be honest here. It's not about everybody being excellent. It's about being honest and seeing where you think you are. Once you've done this phase, when you come back to the action planning, what we look at that point is helping you decide which of the areas that is worth us making actions on, where we're going to have the biggest difference. What are the things we can achieve? Sarah mentioned earlier about things that if you can't change something, you'd love to have more outdoor space, but you don't have outdoor space, then actually making that an action might not be the best sort of thing. So sometimes it's about helping you understand where to go. But this first phase is just about honestly doing a self-evaluation. And it might be that some of them you can answer really easily, and other ones, they're the ones we want to discuss. You might want to take those and discuss them wider with the team. So that's all you're doing on this first phase. Once all your data is in, then there's various options along the top, but we'll show you those next time, including when we come into the improve. That's where you start writing your actions inside here. But that's the bit for the next time. So hopefully that seems quite a simple thing to do. So it probably takes about an hour if you sit down and discuss it. It might be a bit quicker. Depends on your role and everything. If you're a head over 2 schools, or you're an early years leader of 2 schools, over in this participants box, you will be able to switch between any schools that you're allocated to. Simply start typing in their names. As you can see, I can see all the schools there that are here today. You'll only have ones you've got access to. Lisa, yourself, and Jenny, you'll have access to all your individual schools, so you can pick on each different one. But when you first click on, if you've got access to multiple schools, you'll see the combined scores along the top here. So hopefully that makes sense. This is my example tool. Carmela, anything else you want to add on that point? You're on mute, Carmela.
So sorry, Fia. So that's really helpful. Thank you.
And the only other thing I was going to quickly show everybody is the digital network, which is something you've all got access to. I'll send a follow-up email which has all the links to everything, all the dates, all the copies of the slides and things. This is what the digital network looks like when you come in. You'll get a link. You'll get the link. You just register yourself on the online events. These are all the events that are coming up that you're welcome to join. You can spot our next early years one here, which is next week, I think it is. This time next week. But there's also all the other ones, the same ones that might be interesting to you. So that's the events that are coming up. In the video library is videos of all the previous events that we've recorded. And you can see that there you can see different videos, different things. That's lovely Sarah doing a previous session. And then you'll also, the link that you've got will actually bring you into this early years leaders network. And this is where there's other resources. There's also an opportunity to chat to each other. We post reminders about things into here, but you've also got lots of resources in here. I thought I'd flag up the resources. I noticed the way that it says there's 4 lessons. It's just the way the phraseology of this system calls it. But if you clicked on one of those, it's actually full of many different, many different documents and resources that Sarah and Carmela have found. And we're constantly adding to this as we find new things or as people share them from different trusts. And as our network grows, there'll be more happening. So that's just so you know what's in the digital network. Okay, that's all the bits I had. Carmela.
Thank you, Vee. Are you able to put the slides up, Vee?
Yep, hold on a second.
Carmela, there's a question on the chat from Joanne. If we have a reception class and a preschool, would you recommend completing one for each?
We'd still recommend that you complete just one evaluation for both settings, but if it's helpful, you could add in the comment box that Fee showed, where you might just want to provide that rationale or community context as to why you've evaluated it a particular way. Seeing the comment from Anita, yeah, we'll make sure that you've got access to those schools. Hey, great, thank you so much, Fee. So we're really excited. Next week sees the first of our professional learning sessions, which is being led by Tim Taylor, and he's going to be talking about the pedagogy of Mantle of the Expert. I had a meeting with him just a couple of weeks ago, and it sounds like his session is going to be as active as it possibly can be via Zoom, but he's very much designing it as a workshop, and it's exploring the statements within the impact section of the evaluation tool. Please feel free to bring along other team members to join that. Although we're coming at from the angle of early years, the practice of Mantle of the Expert is applicable all through primary as well. And then in March, we have a session on utilising relationships with parents. That's being led by one of our head teachers within the Whole Education Network. And she's going to be sharing some real life on the ground examples of relationship building with our parent community. Sarah, I know you mentioned Greg earlier on and his drawing club. We're thrilled that he's going to be leading one of our professional learning sessions on the 16th of April, very much focused on adventure learning. And then in May, the 14th of May, we're going to be hosting a session with Dr. Gemma Goldenberg from ISSE, the Institute of Science and Early Years. Gemma used to be a member of the Whole Education Network, and she's since gone on to study her PhD and has recently co-written a book, Take Action on Distraction, and she's going to be sharing some of the research from that as part of our session together. And then on the 18th of June, we have got an executive head teacher who's going to be sharing some practice on the effective use of adults and assessment. So you'll see there's a range of expert speakers and members of the network who will support our journey and learning together. Fee is wonderful at reminding us all when these sessions are coming up, so you will receive regular reminders, opportunities to register for those sessions well in advance. And like Fee said, if you just keep your eye on the events page on the digital network, you're very welcome to join other webinars and events that you see are coming up.
And the videos from those we upload to the digital network afterwards. Obviously not when there's bits where there's breakout discussions, they're not recorded or anything like that, but the bulk of the content is uploaded. That's the, I've gone too fast there. I've got a very sensitive mouse. That's the digital network. You'll get a link. You've had it in the invite today, you'll get it in the follow-up. If you are a person like to do it on your phone, there's a QR code that you can scan there. but otherwise it will come in the email afterwards.
I've seen there's a question around the times for the professional learning sessions, so they start at 3:45. We also extend a warm invitation to attend our leadership conference, which is taking place on the 5th of March. As you can see, the headline for that conference is From Attending to Thriving, and very much looking at a holistic approach to tackling the attendance crisis. We can also provide you with a discount code to attend that conference in March, and it would be lovely to meet you in person. And then from the leadership conference in March, we have our summer conference, which is a 2-day conference, which is being held at Warwick University on the 7th and 8th of July. And that will also provide an opportunity for us to come together as participants on the early years programme, to share practice and review where we are on our journeys, as well as gain further inspiration from other speakers. So a warm invitation to be a part of that conference event also. As we've mentioned, in being a member of this programme, you are also able to access other webinars and professional learning events across the wider network of Whole Education. So these are some of the upcoming events that are being hosted through the SEND School Improvement Programme, and you're very welcome to be a part of these events. They're just some of the few that are coming up in the next few weeks, and do keep an eye out on the events page and see what else might be of interest to you and the team. And then that leads us nicely on to this feedback form. We're always keen to gather your feedback to help us shape this programme further. And there is the opportunity as well, if you're sort of in need of sort of some further support in terms of understanding the programme and how it works, feel free to add that on there as well. And if you'd like any sort of further information about the work of Whole Education and the wider network, there's the opportunity as well to share that through the feedback form. I would just like again to say thank you so much, Sarah, for the information and insight that you've shared with us this morning, and the way that you've got us thinking at the start of this programme together. We really do believe that people are at the heart of Whole Education, and we really look forward to being on this journey together. And great that we've got the professional learning next week, so ready to join again and continue that networking. But Sarah, thank you so much for bringing it to life for us today.
Very welcome. It's always an absolute pleasure doing anything for Whole Ed. Thank you. You're going to create your donuts.
Oh,
Jo.
perfect.
Thank you, everyone. We hope that's been useful. If you have any questions, obviously just let us know, and I'll get a follow-up email out to you as soon as the video is finished, which will be later on this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone, for your time today.
Take care.